Welcome, dear friend, as we continue this gentle journey together. Tonight, you are invited into a space of quiet understanding, shaped by ancient wisdom meant to guide a restless mind toward deep calm and truly renewing peace. You may notice the hour, the place where you are listening, and allow yourself to arrive fully here. I will offer a carefully chosen flow of Buddhist stories and Zen reflections that slowly lift the inner veils, revealing the subtle craft of mental freedom and emotional release. Each story carries a quiet yet powerful teaching, capable of transforming how you experience stress, unease, constant thinking, and the endless search for fulfillment outside yourself. These are not merely stories to drift past as sleep approaches. They are softly protected instructions passed down by those who understood a truth many have forgotten. Real peace is not found by rearranging the outer world, but by gently realigning the inner one. As the Zen master Dogen taught, to study the path is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be illuminated by all things. As you listen with openness, you may sense how these ancient offerings quietly light your way. As our shared listening continues, a subtle yet steady shift may begin to unfold. The grip of anxiety loosens. The constant background noise of thought softens and fades. Without effort, you settle into a state of calm insight and deep stillness. Allow yourself now to sink fully into rest. Let your body be held by whatever supports you. Take one slow, intentional breath with me, and as you release it, trust that the wisdom you are about to receive has always been here, patiently waiting for your awareness. Let us now enter a story that reveals the gentle contrast between resistance and acceptance. High in the mountains, where mist rests on ancient peaks, there stood a monastery where the Zen master Baizhang Huaihai guided his students toward awakening. For many evenings during Dharma talks, an elderly figure appeared among the monks, arriving silently and leaving as they did. His presence seemed ordinary, almost unnoticed, until one night, when after the monks had stepped into the cool mountain air, he remained behind. Baizhang approached the lone figure, sensing something unusual in his stillness. "Who stands before me?" the master asked with quiet curiosity. The old man's eyes carried the weight of long sorrow as he replied, "I am not truly a man, though I appear as one. Long ago, in the time of Kassapa Buddha, I was the head monk of this mountain. A sincere student once asked me a question that sealed my fate. Does one who is enlightened fall under the law of cause and effect? In arrogance, I answered, no, such a person does not. Because of this single mistaken word, I was condemned to live 500 lifetimes as a wild fox, watching seasons turn from the forest floor, unable to return to human form." The centuries trembled in his voice. "Master, please speak a turning word that may free me." He then asked Baizhang the same question. "Does an enlightened person fall under the law of cause and effect?" Baizhang looked deeply into him, seeing both the monk he had been and the fox he had become. With calm clarity, he replied, "An enlightened person is one with cause and effect." At these words, the old man seemed to change entirely. Tears flowed as he bowed deeply. "I am free," he whispered. "My body lies in a cave beyond this mountain. Please honor it with proper rites. At dawn, Baizhang led his puzzled monks along the winding path. Behind a cluster of rocks lay the still body of a great fox. As incense rose into the sky, the master performed funeral rites reserved for monks, honoring a spirit that had finally returned home. The Buddha taught that what we think shapes what we become, what we feel draws what we meet, and what we imagine gives rise to what we create. This truth illuminates the heart of Baizhang's teaching. The shift from being subject to life to being one with its unfolding transformed centuries of suffering into a single moment of release. Why do we so often resist the laws that shape our existence? Zen teaches that much of our suffering arises from standing apart from life's patterns rather than moving with them. The fox monk's error was not only intellectual, it reflected a deep human tendency to believe we can escape the principles governing all experience. When we declare ourselves exempt from cause and effect, we create the illusion of separation. We imagine ourselves as isolated agents, disconnected from the web that binds all things. This illusion becomes a quiet prison, cutting us off from the wisdom available. When we recognize our unity with existence itself, notice how this appears in daily life. When we resist aging, we suffer more than aging itself causes. When we fight failure, we add pain beyond disappointment. When we struggle against difficult emotions, we intensify them. Each time we think, "This should not be happening to me," we release a second arrow of unnecessary suffering. The awakened person does not escape cause and effect, but moves in harmony with it. Freedom comes not from standing outside natural law, but from flowing so completely with it that no separation remains between self and circumstance. As Suzuki Roshi gently said, "You are complete as you are, and there is still room to grow." Both are true when resistance falls away. Thich Nhat Hanh reminded us that because of impermanence, everything is possible. When we accept that all things arise and pass through causes and conditions, we find freedom within those very conditions. The fox was freed not by escaping the law, but by fully belonging to it. Responsibility then becomes empowering. Each choice plants seeds. Each moment invites alignment with wisdom. As you rest tonight, notice where you are resisting what is. Gently explore the feeling of being one with rather than subject to. Where might freedom appear through full acceptance of your place in the great unfolding? The Buddha taught that hatred never ends through hatred, but only through. This timeless rule is not a limit, but the very fabric from which liberation is woven. As our journey continues, let us turn to a story of seeing beauty within loss. In the mountain temple where Master Yunmen Wenyen lived, autumn arrived with its familiar poetry of change. Ancient maples that shaded the halls now glowed in gold and crimson, leaves drifting through the cool air. A young monk, touched by the sorrow that often comes with changing seasons, sought his teacher. Autumn's beauty stirred sadness within him, a reminder of life's passing and the losses yet to come. Each falling leaf seemed to speak of his own mortality. He found Master Yunmen sweeping the courtyard. "Master," the monk said softly, "when the tree fades and the leaves fall, what is truly happening? I see such beauty, yet feel only sorrow. Why does this splendor speak so clearly of endings?" Yunmen paused, resting on his broom. He looked up as sunlight filtered through the leaves like colored glass. In the distance, leaves spiraled downward, each completing its path. Instead of offering doctrine, he simply said, "The golden wind is revealing itself." In that instant, something shifted. Where the monks saw endings, the master pointed to beginnings. Where there was decay, there was life expressing itself anew. The autumn wind was not destroying the leaves. It was simply being what it is, without resistance. Buddha's teaching reminds us that the past has passed, the future has not arrived, and life exists only here and now. This story reveals our habit of placing fear onto natural change. To fix it, on falling leaves and miss the golden wind. Zen points to how we interpret impermanence through personal anxiety. Rather than universal wisdom, we project our fear onto every transformation, missing the living energy that drives change itself. Minds trained to seek permanence label change as threat. When leaves fall, we imagine death. When relationships shift, we fear loss. When bodies age, we see only decline. This conditioning blinds us to what Yun Men called the golden wind, the living force expressing itself through all transformation. What if autumn is not about ending, but about completion? What if falling leaves are not loss, but the tree's final gift, returning nourishment to the soil for future growth? The golden wind shows that what appears as loss is life, generously moving from one form to another. Consider the transitions in your own life. A career ending may reveal freedom. A relationship closing may open deeper understanding. Even aging, so often resisted, may become a golden wind, offering wisdom and gentleness. Dogen taught that to study the Buddha way is to study the self, and to forget the self. When we release the fearful self clinging to fixed forms, we recognize ourselves as expressions of the same golden wind moving through all things. We are not observers watching life fade. We are life itself, flowing through countless forms. This understanding turns grief into gratitude. Leaves do not fall unwillingly. They release at the right moment, each one a quiet celebration of completion. When we move with this rhythm, our own changes soften and become graceful. Thich Nhat Hanh reminded us that because of impermanence, everything is possible. The same golden wind that carries autumn leaves also brings the blossoms of spring. The same quiet force that softens and ages the body also deepens the heart's capacity for wisdom and compassion. Tonight, as you gently observe changes unfolding in your own life or in the world around you, see if you can sense the golden wind moving within what appears to be an ending. Perhaps you may notice fresh possibilities arising from old forms, or recognize your own place within life's endless creativity. The one who is burned first is always the one who holds on. So much of our suffering comes not from pain itself, but from replaying it, retelling it, reviving it long after its natural life has ended. Small irritations pass through our days like brief weather, a delay, a careless word, a disappointment. They arise, linger briefly, and are ready to fade. Yet we often keep them alive by feeding them with attention. We rehearse conversations, revisit wrongs, and carry the residue of moments that no longer exist. Each repetition is like placing the insect back into the cup, again and again. A gentle Zen teaching reminds us that because everything is impermanent, everything is also possible. Even anger, even sorrow. When we stop breathing life into what has already passed, space opens naturally for peace to return. So tonight, if your mind drifts toward a small frustration from earlier, today you might gently ask yourself, is this moment still alive, or am I carrying its shadow? Let it rest. Let it complete itself. Remain here. And now, we continue with a story about discovering abundance where loss once seemed to live. A poet monk lived quietly at the foot of a mountain, his home a small hut surrounded by bamboo. He lived simply, finding joy in the rhythm of seasons and the smallest movements of nature. Each spring, tender bamboo shoots appeared near his dwelling. He watched them daily, not with ownership, but with gentle wonder. One evening, after spending the day sharing teachings in a nearby village, he returned home to find the bamboo gone. The earth was disturbed, the shoots carefully taken. A visiting student, seeing this, became angry on his behalf. He demanded action. He demanded justice. But the monk only looked quietly at the empty soil. After a long moment, he turned his gaze toward the horizon where the sky was burning softly with color. "Yes," he said gently, "the bamboo is gone. But look, the sunset remains." In that moment, the teaching was complete. What we release creates space to see what cannot be taken. Loss only becomes suffering when we allow it to blind us to what still surrounds us. When we loosen our grip on what has been removed, we remain open to what continues to arrive: beauty, connection, breath, presence. As the Buddha taught, the more we let go, the more peace we make room for. Now rest here, allowing these stories to settle gently within you. Nothing is missing in this moment. Nothing needs to be held. Just breathe and allow the night to carry you deeper into stillness. There is more than enough joy moving quietly through the world. It does not run out. It does not need to be guarded. A Zen teacher once spoke gently about the difference between reaching and receiving. When we reach, our hands close around a single thing, and in doing so, we unknowingly turn away from everything else. When we receive, our hands remain open, and our hearts stay available to whatever life is offering right now. The sunset was never missing. It was always painting the sky in silence. But anger had narrowed the student's vision, making beauty invisible. This is one of the quiet revelations of letting go. What can be taken from us was never the deepest source of fulfillment. The breath moving through your body, the rhythm of day and night, the changing seasons, the simple ability to feel wonder, these belong to no one. They arise from the same vast life that you are part of. A Zen master once taught that to walk the Buddha's path is to study the self. And to truly study the self is to forget the small self that counts gains and losses. When that narrow self softens, we remember the larger self, the one woven into all things. From this wider view, nothing is truly stolen. Everything moves through the same endless current of giving and receiving. One teacher of our time reminds us that in the end, only three things truly matter: how fully we lived, how deeply we loved, and how gently we learned to let go. The monk who watched the sunset lived so lightly that even loss could not touch his joy. river, every mountain, every dangerous ravine. You can guide others with ease. Yet look at your feet. The student looked down. His sandals were clean, untouched by dust or stone. You have never walked the path, Foyin continued. Knowledge is precise, but only theoretical. You are like someone who studies, swimming but never enters the water, or memorizes recipes without lighting a fire. Understanding began to dawn, yet the student asked, "Then should I abandon the sutras? Should I discard all this learning?" "No," Foyin replied softly. "Do not discard the sutras. Allow the sutras to discard you. When you walk, just walk. When you eat, just eat. Do not carry instructions in your head while living your life. Let the teachings pass through you like a clear stream over smooth stones. Do not grasp them or store them away." The student frowned. "If I don't try to understand, how can I learn?" Foyin's eyes shone with gentle humor. Truth is not contained in words. A sutra is like moonlight on water. You cannot scoop up the moon, but its light can guide you. When the water is still, the reflection is clear. When you grasp, the surface ripples and the image breaks. He gestured toward the garden, where a monk quietly swept fallen leaves, fully present, doing nothing more and nothing less than what was needed. Watch him closely. He learned to sweep not by reading about sweeping, but by moving the broom day after day until the movement became effortless. Now the sweeping happens through him rather than being done by him. This is how wisdom lives, not as information stored in the mind, but as understanding flowing through the whole body and heart. The student watched the monk at work and noticed something subtle and beautiful. There was no self-awareness in the motion, no concern for method or correctness, only the quiet expression of purposeful action. The monk was not thinking about sweeping. He had become sweeping itself. From that moment on, the student began to meet the Dharma in a different way. He no longer studied texts like a scholar gathering facts for examination. Instead, he read them as one listens to wind passing through pine branches, alert, open, without the hungry grasp that had once driven his learning. When the teachings spoke of compassion, he looked for simple chances to be kind rather than memorizing definitions. When mindfulness was described, he followed his breath instead of analyzing instructions. Slowly, he discovered that when he stopped trying to seize wisdom, it began to enter him naturally. The teachings worked on him beneath the surface of thought. His movements softened. His speech became gentler. His presence grew quieter and more at ease, not because he followed rules, but because the living spirit of the Dharma had settled into his daily experience. The Buddha spoke of this when he said, "Thousands of candles can be lit from a single candle, and its flame will not be diminished. Happiness does not decrease when it is shared." This story reveals the difference between storing spiritual knowledge and allowing wisdom to move through us as life itself. Why do we so often confuse collecting teachings with genuine transformation? Zen points to a deep habit of believing that more information means deeper understanding. This way of thinking serves us in material matters, but becomes a trap when applied inwardly. We gather teachings like souvenirs, building impressive collections while remaining unchanged by what we carry. Our culture strengthens this habit. Intelligence is measured by what we retain, success by what we accumulate, progress by visible achievement. When this mindset enters spiritual life, wisdom becomes another possession. We turn into spiritual consumers instead of practitioners. The student's struggle reflects what Zen calls a subtle sickness, being so full of ideas that there is no space for direct experience. We become like people who describe water in great detail while dying of thirst, or experts on swimming who have never entered the river. The mind becomes crowded with unused tools. This pattern appears everywhere. Someone owns shelves of self-help books yet repeats the same difficulties. Another studies happiness endlessly while feeling empty. Advice is memorized, but life remains untouched. Or consider the person who reads every study on health and exercise, yet never walks far enough to wear dust into their shoes. Theory replaces living. There is a quiet reward in learning new ideas, a pleasant sense of progress that does not demand real change. Reading about courage feels safer than acting bravely. Studying compassion is easier than opening the heart to someone difficult. Thinking about mindfulness requires less vulnerability than sitting with real fear. Even the ego learns to hide behind spiritual language. Non-attachment becomes an excuse to avoid commitment. Impermanence becomes a reason to escape responsibility. Teachings meant to free us turn into shelters from transformation. True study asks for what is called beginner's mind, meeting each teaching and each moment without the weight of what we already know. When we read this way, words can reach places deeper than thought. To let the sutras discard you means reading about patience and then practicing it with someone challenging. It means encountering generosity and responding by giving without analysis. A teaching on letting go becomes an invitation to release what you are holding too tightly right now. Loving kindness becomes a gentle message sent to someone you have avoided. A Korean Zen master said, "Only go straight. Don't know mind." This not knowing is not ignorance, but openness. When we approach teachings without armor, they can truly change us. Foyen's insight is simple. Teachings work best when we stop working on them. Like seeds placed in fertile soil, the Dharma grows in a mind that is present and undefended. Tonight, as wisdom comes to you through words, silence, or experience, see if you can let it pass through you like a clear stream. Receive without storing. Allow without grasping. The Buddha taught diligence, yet perhaps the deepest diligence is learning to step aside so transformation can unfold. True practice leaves dust on the sandals and space in the mind. Now let us turn to a story about moving from seeking answers to embracing life itself. In a monastery where ancient questions had echoed for generations, a young monk struggled with the most famous riddle of Zen. Day after day, he sat in meditation, pressing his mind against the question, what is the sound of one hand clapping? Over time, frustration replaced ease. The koan became an obsession, tightening his thoughts, draining the natural joy from his practice. One morning, after another restless night, his teacher approached him with unexpected words. "My student," the master said gently, "you will leave the monastery today. Go down to the town and stay for 1 week. Forget the koan entirely. Do not think of one hand or its sound. Simply walk, listen, and see. Make no effort to achieve anything." Confused, yet obedient, the monk descended into the busy town. The marketplace greeted him with sound and movement. Vendors sang out their goods. Children laughed in narrow streets. A blacksmith's hammer struck steady rhythm. A beggar's song drifted through the crowd. Day after day, the monk wandered without purpose. He witnessed arguments and kindness, hurry and patience, heat and fatigue. Without seeking an answer, his awareness softened. Life met him directly. When he returned to the monastery, his master noticed the change at once. "Did you hear the sound of one hand?" he asked. The monk paused, not searching, simply allowing truth to speak. "The sound of one hand," he said softly, "is the joy in a merchant's voice. It is the silence between hammer strikes. It is sunlight on my face and the honest tiredness of walking far. The sound of one hand is not apart from the world." And in that quiet understanding, the seeking mind finally came to rest. It was the world itself revealing its own true nature. His teacher smiled with quiet joy. The young monk had finally stopped listening for something special and had begun hearing everything. Ancient Buddhist wisdom tells us that when you truly see how complete life already is, you may tilt your head back and laugh at the open sky. Here we discover that the deepest realization does not arise from intense effort, but from the willingness to rest fully within ordinary experience. Why do we believe that awakening requires rare conditions or dramatic moments? Zen shows us that our searching often becomes the very barrier to what we long to find. Like someone desperately searching for glasses that are already resting on their face, we tire ourselves chasing what is immediately present in each breath. The monk's awakening illustrates what Zen teachers mean when they say, "Ordinary mind is the way." The sound of one hand is not a mysterious event reserved for altered states. It is the constant voice of life itself, available to anyone who listens. Without expectation and without spiritual ambition. Notice how this appears in our own lives. We meditate in order to find peace, while peace is already here in the gentle rhythm of breathing. We study teachings to discover our true nature, forgetting that our true nature is the one who is studying. We practice mindfulness to become present, while presence is what allows practice to happen at all. The effort to obtain what we already are creates the illusion of distance. The marketplace became the monk's classroom precisely because it was not trying to be sacred. The merchant's call, the child's laughter, the steady strike of the hammer. Each sound was completely itself. This is what Zen calls suchness, the simple, unself-conscious fact of being exactly what one is. A Zen master once said, "The foolish reject what they see and believe what they think. The wise reject what they think and trust what they see." When the monk released his thinking and allowed his senses to open, the sound of one hand revealed itself as the full symphony of existence unfolding without effort. This understanding does not deny the value of practice. Rather, it clarifies its purpose. Meditation, study, and reflection are not meant to manufacture special states, but to quiet the noise that prevents us from recognizing what has always been here. Like polishing a mirror, practice removes the dust of concepts so our natural clarity can shine. The sound of one hand in your own life may be the warmth of morning tea, the steady rise and fall of your chest, the peaceful weight of a sleeping animal nearby, or the simple miracle of awareness reading these words. These are not lesser experiences. They are awakening expressing itself through your unique circumstances. Tonight, as you rest and listen, perhaps you hear the soft hum of electricity, distant movement outside, or your own heartbeat. Can you receive these sounds as expressions of the same boundless source flowing through all things? Can you sense that the listener and what is heard are waves moving within the same ocean? The Buddha taught that, in the end, three things matter most: how well we have lived, how well we have loved, and how gently we have learned to let go. The sound of one hand teaches us that living well means recognizing the extraordinary within the ordinary. Loving well means embracing what is, rather than longing for what is. And letting go well means releasing our grip on spiritual striving itself. Now we continue with a story about remaining balanced regardless of circumstance, the teaching of Master Hakuin and the quiet power of, is that so? Master Hakuin lived in a small village where he was widely respected for his wisdom, kindness, and disciplined life. For many years, he was regarded as a rare example of spiritual purity, someone who had risen above ordinary human weakness. Villagers came to him for guidance, trusting both his words and his way of being. In the same village lived a young woman from a respected family. When she became pregnant outside of marriage, shock spread quickly through the community. Her parents, filled with anger and shame, demanded to know who was responsible. At first, she refused to speak, hoping to protect the man she loved. But as the pressure grew unbearable, fear overtook her clarity. In desperation, she named the one person she believed could endure the accusation better than her true lover, the revered Master Hakuin. When her parents confronted him, they expected denial or outrage. Instead, he listened calmly and replied only, "Is that so?" To the parents, this quiet response sounded like confirmation. Rumors spread rapidly. Those who had once honored Hakuin now whispered behind his back. Students left him. His reputation collapsed almost overnight. When the child was born, the parents brought the infant to Hakuin and placed it in his arms. "This is your responsibility now," they said bitterly. Once again he replied softly, "Is that so?" and accepted the child without protest. For many months, Hakuin cared for the baby with gentle devotion. He fed the child, washed cloths, soothed cries through sleepless nights, and gave the warmth of steady presence. The respect he once received disappeared, but his care never wavered. Meanwhile, the young woman was consumed by guilt. Seeing an innocent man suffer while offering love to a child that was not his became unbearable. At last, she confessed the truth. The real father was another man in the village. Her parents rushed to Hakuin, bowing deeply and apologizing through tears. "Master, we have wronged you," they said. "You have suffered for our mistake. Please forgive us," they said softly, "and allow us to take the child back to the true family." Hakuin listened to their words with the same calm presence he had offered their accusations. As he gently placed the baby into their waiting arms, he spoke the same simple phrase he had carried through the entire ordeal. "Is that so?" The Buddha taught that hatred is never ended by hatred, but only by love. This is the timeless law. What this story reveals is the quiet strength of inner balance, the power of remaining steady no matter how we are seen or what circumstances arise around us. Why do we so often allow events and opinions outside ourselves to rule our inner world? Zen teaches that true freedom comes from discovering an unmovable center within, a place that remains peaceful whether we are praised or blamed, respected or rejected, treated fairly or unjustly. Hakuin's "Is that so?" was not indifference. It was not weakness. It was the deepest form of non-attachment, freedom from reputation, status, and even the demand for justice. His response showed that his sense of worth did not depend on approval or recognition. It arose from within. Most of us would instinctively defend ourselves against false accusations or public shame. We would struggle to correct the story, to reclaim our image. Yet Hakuin demonstrated another way, meeting every condition with the same quiet acceptance. This does not mean that injustice should always go unanswered, nor that we must remain passive in the face of harm. The teaching is more subtle. It reminds us that our inner peace does not have to wait for the world to become fair. We can remain centered even when circumstances are painful or confusing. The Buddha said, "You will not be punished for your anger. You will be punished by your anger." Hakuin's equanimity protected him from the extra suffering that resentment and self-pity would have created. Though his situation was difficult, he did not deepen the pain by resisting it inwardly. Look gently at your own life. When you meet criticism, misunderstanding, or unfair treatment, how much of your suffering comes from what happened, and how much from the story you tell yourself about it? Hakuin's life shows that we have more influence over the second than we often realize. Tonight, as you encounter judgments or confusion, can you remember this quiet phrase, "Is that so?" Can you notice the space between what happens and how you respond? In that space, peace is already waiting. The Buddha taught that peace comes from within. Do not search for it outside yourself. True spiritual growth is not measured by how kindly life treats us, but by how gently we meet whatever arrives, preserving compassion, dignity, and inner stillness whether or not the world understands us. Now, let us continue with a Zen story about the unexpected nature of awakening, known as the Kitchen Monk's realization. In the quiet mountains near Lake Hakone stood a great monastery, renowned for its strict discipline and deep wisdom. Among its residents lived a humble monk named Ichi, whose life reveals the difference between endless seeking and simple finding. For 55 years, Ichi worked faithfully in the monastery kitchen, while others sat in meditation halls or debated sutras. He chopped vegetables, stirred pots, and tended fires with steady attention. His hands were permanently stained, his back bent from decades of service, yet he carried out each task with care. Still, Ichi bore a quiet sorrow. Since his early years, he had been given a koan, a question meant to dissolve the thinking mind. His was the most famous of all. What is the sound of one hand clapping? Day after day, year after year, he wrestled with this question. He tried logic, intuition, imagination, every strategy his mind could invent. As time passed, he began to see himself as a failure. Younger monks arrived, progressed, and were acknowledged by their teachers, while Ichi remained with the same unanswered question. 55 years, he would whisper while stirring soup. 55 years, and still I cannot hear it. The koan followed him through every task, every season, every quiet moment of his long life. As his body grew weak, Ichi was moved to a small attic room to rest. There, in the soft twilight of his final days, something unexpected occurred. Slowly, the familiar weight of striving loosened its grip. The urgency to solve the koan, the shame of failure, the endless reaching for awakening began to fade. Like mist dissolving in morning light, his effort disappeared. The fierce desire for enlightenment that had driven him for decades gently fell away. In its place arose something he had never imagined, a deep, tender peace that seemed to hold his entire being. His breathing slowed, thoughts quieted. In that profound stillness, where there were no more questions and no need for answers, Ichi finally heard it. The sound of one hand clapping revealed itself not as a noise, but as the silent essence of existence itself, the presence that had always been there beneath his searching. The Buddha spoke of this when he said, "Cease to cherish opinions, and enlightenment appears." Awakening is not something we achieve through effort. It is something that reveals itself when effort finally rests. Why do we struggle so fiercely when the very struggle keeps us from what we seek? The mind creates a split between seeker and sought, pushing fulfillment into an imagined future. Ichi's life shows us what Zen calls beginner's mind. The simple awareness that exists before ambition complicates it. For decades, he turned simple presence into spiritual striving. The more intensely he searched, the further he moved from the clarity that had always been with him. His awakening came not from solving the koan, but from releasing the need to solve anything at all. And in that gentle letting go, the answer had been waiting all along. The sound of one hand clapping is not a puzzle meant to be solved, but an invitation to rest in the space before thinking arises, the quiet awareness that exists before questions and answers are born. Tonight, as thoughts about your own spiritual path drift through the mind, remember Ichi's gentle realization. What if the awareness that notices your seeking is already what you are seeking? What if the sound of one hand clapping is closer than you ever imagined, present in the very listening that hears all sounds, even silence itself? The Buddha taught, peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. Sometimes the greatest accomplishment is the courage to stop striving and simply rest in what has always been here. Now let us continue our journey with a teaching about the subtle danger that lies between understanding something intellectually and living it directly. This is the story of the one-eyed monk and the silent debate. In ancient China, wandering monks traveled from monastery to monastery, seeking instruction and testing their insight. Among Zen communities, a custom arose. Before a traveling monk could be offered lodging for the night, he was required to engage in what was known as dharma, combat with the abbot or a senior representative. This was not physical conflict, but a meeting of insight, where questions and responses revealed the depth of realization beyond words. At a respected monastery nestled among bamboo groves, a weary traveler arrived as evening. Shadows stretched across the courtyard stones. His robes were dusted with mountain soil, his sandals thin from long roads, yet his eyes shone with the alert sincerity of a true seeker. The abbot, occupied with evening responsibilities, asked his attendant to conduct the encounter. This attendant had served the monastery for many years. In his youth, he had lost one eye in an accident. What some saw as a limitation had, over time, sharpened his inner vision. He carried a quiet clarity born of hardship and long practice. When the two monks met in the reception hall, the traveler proposed an unusual approach. "Let us debate in silence," he suggested, indicating they would speak only with gestures, not words. Some truths, he implied, live beyond language. The attendant agreed, and the exchange began. The traveler raised one finger toward the sky. Holding it steadily, his face calm and assured. Without hesitation, the attendant raised two fingers in response. Encouraged, The traveler then lifted 3 fingers. At this point, the attendant surprised him by forming a tight fist and holding it firmly between them. The traveler froze. His confidence wavered as he stared at the clenched hand, confusion spreading across his face. After a brief pause, he bowed abruptly and left the hall. Soon after, he sought out the abbot, speaking with deep respect mixed with disappointment. "Venerable teacher," he said, "your representative is far beyond my understanding. I am not worthy to stay here and must continue my journey." The abbot, intrigued, asked what had taken place. The traveler explained earnestly, "I raised 1 finger to symbolize the Buddha, the awakened one. Your monk responded with 2 fingers, representing the Buddha and the Dharma. I then raised 3 fingers to indicate the 3 jewels, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. But he responded with a fist, showing that all 3 are one undivided reality. His insight surpasses mine." As the traveler departed into the dimming light, the attendant arrived. Breathing hard, his face flushed with anger. "Where is that disrespectful fellow?" he demanded. "I have never encountered such rudeness disguised as spiritual inquiry." The abbot asked calmly what had happened. "He insulted me," the attendant said. "He held up 1 finger to mock me for having only 1 eye. I tried to remain polite and held up 2 fingers to acknowledge that he had 2 eyes. But then he raised 3 fingers to emphasize that together we only had 3 eyes. I had enough. I made a fist because I was ready to strike him, but he ran away. We do not see the world as it is. We see the world as we are. Some people encounter kindness wherever they go. Others meet resistance at every turn, even in the same places. Buddhist understanding explains that our habitual mental patterns become lenses through which reality is filtered. We notice what confirms our expectations and overlook what does not. The first traveler carried a mind trained to expect disappointment. His awareness searched for faults and found them easily. The second carried a mind inclined toward goodwill, and so connection revealed itself naturally. This does not mean the world is always gentle or fair. It means that the quality of our attention profoundly shapes how life meets us. As a Zen saying reminds us, wherever you go, there you are. No change of location could have healed the first man's suffering, because he would have brought the same inner weather with him. Yet the same truth holds hope as well. When we cultivate patience, curiosity, and appreciation, new possibilities quietly appear. Tonight, as you rest, notice the lens through which you tend to view your own life. Do you scan for what is missing, or do you remain open to what might be offered? As the Buddha taught, the mind is everything. What you think, you become. And now, let us move gently into another story, one that speaks of choice, responsibility, and the quiet power held in every moment. There once was a young student who grew weary of his teacher's calm and seemingly perfect answers. He believed the old master only spoke in riddles to appear wise, and he resolved to expose what he thought was mere cleverness. After days of planning, he devised a test. One morning, he caught a small sparrow in the garden. The bird trembled softly in his cupped hands, its tiny heart beating fast against his palms. He hid it behind his back and approached the teacher, who sat peacefully in the morning light, reading. "Master," the student said, excitement barely concealed, "I have a question for you." The teacher looked up, eyes gentle, already sensing the student's intention. "Please," he said, "ask." The young man stepped closer. "I am holding a bird. he said. "Tell me, is it alive or dead?" He felt certain of his victory. If the teacher said alive, he would crush the bird. If he said dead, he would release it. Either way, the master would be proven wrong. The teacher remained silent for a long moment. His gaze rested calmly on the student, as though seeing far beyond the trick itself. Then he spoke quietly. "The answer," he said, "is in your hands." The student froze. In that instant, his elaborate plan dissolved. He felt the bird's fragile life pulsing against his skin and understood. The outcome had never depended on the teacher's wisdom. It had always rested within his own choice. Slowly, he brought his hands forward and opened them. The sparrow paused, then lifted itself into the open sky, disappearing into the trees. The Buddha taught that with our thoughts, we make the world. In every moment, we hold something precious: our actions, our words, our intentions. Life unfolds according to how we choose to hold what is placed in our care. We often look outward for answers, for permission, for certainty. Yet Zen points us back inward, again and again. True teachers do not give us solutions. They return us to our own responsibility, our own awareness, our own freedom. As you drift towards sleep now, rest with this knowing: much of life is already in your hands. And within that gentle responsibility, there is great peace. Let your breath soften. Let the mind grow quiet. And allow understanding to settle naturally, like the bird returning to the sky. Zen teacher Charlotte Jokobek once said, "We are always in choice, even when we think we are not." The small bird resting in the student's hands is a symbol of all those moments when we tell ourselves we have no options, no strength, no responsibility. Yet awareness itself always contains choice, and choice quietly carries responsibility within it. Look gently at a challenge you are facing now. Where might you be waiting for someone else to decide, to rescue, to give direction? What might shift if you recognize that the power to shape your response is already resting in your own hands? This does not mean you control the outer world. It means you are never without choice in how you meet it. The Buddha taught, the mind is everything. What you think, you become. Each thought, each intention, each small action is like the student's decision with the bird, a moment where life or harm, clarity or confusion, compassion or indifference can arise. The answer is always here, quietly waiting in our hands. Tonight, as you prepare for rest, feel the weight of the choices you carry, not as a burden, but as the dignity of being conscious. As the Buddha reminded us, no one can walk the path for us. We must walk it ourselves. The bird flew free not because of the teacher's wisdom, but because of the student's choice. In recognizing our own capacity to choose kindness over cruelty, truth over fear, we begin to trust ourselves more deeply. And now, let us move onward into another teaching, one that reveals the quiet power hidden inside ordinary life. second-hand descriptions of someone else's realization. A teacher does not give enlightenment. A teacher creates conditions in which students may recognize what has always been present. Tonight, as you rest in the simple fact of being aware of these words, aware of your body, aware of the quiet space in which thoughts and sensations come and go, can you turn gently toward this awareness itself, rather than thinking about it? Can you be present with experience instead of trying to understand it through borrowed explanations? As the Buddha advised, work out your own liberation with care and sincerity. The path to freedom cannot be walked on your behalf. It requires your own steps, your own breath, your own willingness to look directly at what you have always been, but perhaps never clearly seen. Now, let us move into another teaching, a story that reveals the difference between submission and genuine understanding. This is the lesson of the proud priest and the gentle master. By this time, Master Bankai's reputation had spread widely throughout the region. Unlike teachers who filled their talks with complex philosophy and long quotations from ancient texts, Bankei spoke simply, directly, from his own realization to the hearts of his listeners. His words were plain, yet deeply penetrating, understood by farmers and scholars alike. People from every walk of life, merchants, servants, samurai, monks, gathered to hear him speak of the natural peace that already exists within every person. The master's growing popularity disturbed a priest from the Nichiren sect, whose temple had gradually grown quieter as followers left to hear this Zen teacher. The priest's identity was built upon being learned, respected, and obeyed. He took pride in his mastery of scripture and his skill in debate. That a simple Zen monk could draw people away with ordinary words felt like a personal insult. Determined to expose what he believed to be shallow teaching disguised as wisdom, the priest burst into one of Bankai's gatherings. He pushed through the seated listeners, his robes sweeping dramatically, his face tight with righteous anger. The peaceful atmosphere grew tense as people turned to see the disruption. "Hey, Zen teacher," the priest shouted, his voice echoing harshly through the hall. The disrespect in his tone was unmistakable. "Wait, I have something to say to you." Bankei looked up calmly, without irritation or defense. His eyes held the same gentle attention he offered to everyone, those who came with sincere questions and those who arrived with hostility. "All these people respect you," the priest continued loudly, emboldened by the silence. "They obey whatever you say. But I do not respect you at all. Can you make me obey you? Can your so-called wisdom control someone who sees through your tricks?" The crowd waited, expecting anger or a sharp rebuttal. Instead, Bankei smiled softly, with genuine warmth. "Please come sit beside me," the master said quietly. "I will show you." Confident and pleased that he had provoked a response, the priest moved to the front, standing. Beside Bankai's cushion, his chest lifted with pride, ready to demonstrate his independence. "Thank you," Bankei said kindly. "We may hear each other better if you stand on my left side. Please step here." Without thinking, the priest complied. Bankei paused, then added gently, "Actually, it may be clearer if you stand on my right side instead. Would you mind moving there?" Again, the priest moved automatically, not noticing that he was following instructions. Bankai's smile deepened. "You see," he said softly, "you are already obeying me. And I believe you are, in truth, a gentle and cooperative person. Now please sit down and listen." The priest stood frozen, suddenly aware of what had occurred. He had come to prove his dominance, yet revealed his own natural openness. His argument dissolved, not through force or clever words, but through simple awareness. The hall remained silent. Many struggled not to smile. They had witnessed not humiliation, but revelation. True influence did not arise from authority or demands, but from kindness and clarity. The priest felt his anger soften, his arrogance loosen, replaced by something unexpected. Curiosity. How had this quiet man accomplished what felt like magic? And as these words fade, allow the question to rest gently within you. Like breath, like stillness, like sleep slowly arriving. How had he turned a hostile challenge into a moment of shared understanding without ever raising his voice or claiming authority? Still unsettled by what had just occurred, the priest slowly sat down. As Bankei began speaking again, his words no longer collided with the priest's analytical mind. Instead, they slipped past it, settling quietly in his heart. For the first time in many years, he listened without searching for errors, without preparing rebuttals, without defending an identity. He simply listened. The Buddha taught that true obedience is not blind submission, but conscious harmony. This ancient insight reveals the difference between obedience born of fear or social pressure and cooperation that arises naturally from understanding. Yet how often do we confuse authority with authoritarianism, influence with control? Zen Buddhism gently exposes our conditioning around power. We assume that cooperation must be forced, that respect must be demanded, that influence requires superiority. But the deeper teaching here shows that true leadership arises from understanding human nature, not from overpowering it. The priest arrived expecting confrontation, because domination was the only form of authority he had ever known. Instead, he encountered someone who trusted his natural willingness to cooperate. In that moment, his entire framework for understanding power quietly loosened. Consider your own experiences with authority. The teachers, leaders, or guides who truly shaped your life. Did they command obedience through fear, or did they inspire cooperation by appealing to your better nature? The difference is subtle, yet profound. Forced compliance breeds resistance. Invited cooperation creates genuine change. In daily life, we often repeat the same mistake as the priest. We enter disagreements armed for battle, preparing arguments, reinforcing defenses, assuming we must overpower others to be heard. But Bankai's response offers another way. What if we trusted the innate wisdom within others and invited it forward instead of challenging it? Zen teacher Thich Nhat Hanh wrote that when someone causes us suffering, it is because they themselves are deeply suffering. Their pain overflows. The priest's aggression came not from strength, but from insecurity and fear of losing relevance. Bankai's clarity lay in seeing beyond the harsh surface to the suffering beneath, and responding to that instead. This does not mean submission or weakness. Bankei did not accept the priest's demand for debate, nor did he retreat. He held steady boundaries while redirecting the energy of conflict into understanding. He transformed a power struggle into a moment of awakening. The Buddha taught that hatred is never ended by hatred, but only by non-hatred. This timeless law applies not only to anger, but to all forms of resistance. When resistance meets resistance, tension multiplies. When resistance meets understanding, space opens. Tonight, as you reflect on relationships where you feel the need to defend your position or assert control, remember the gentle master who never demanded obedience, yet received cooperation effortlessly. Can you invite wisdom instead of confronting resistance? As the Buddha observed, separateness is the root of suffering, while compassion is the source of true strength. Real authority does not come from making others obey, but from helping them discover their own willingness to move together in harmony. Now, let us continue our journey with another quiet teaching. This story reveals the difference between helping and holding on. It is known as the lesson of the two monks and the woman at the river. Two monks were traveling together along a mountain path, heading toward a distant monastery where they hoped to deepen their practice. Both were sincere practitioners who followed strict vows, including a commitment to avoid physical contact with women. This discipline was not rooted in disrespect, but in their belief that restraint supported clarity and focus. As they reached a wide river swollen by recent storms, they found the bridge damaged and impassable. At the river's edge stood a young woman, hesitant and afraid. The current rushed fiercely, carrying debris from the mountains, and she knew she could not cross alone. "Honored monks," she called softly, "would one of you help me cross? I am not strong enough to do it safely." One monk immediately stiffened. His mind raced through rules, consequences, and justifications. Physical contact was forbidden. He began forming explanations for why they could not help, searching for alternatives that would preserve their vows. The other monk looked only at the river and the fear in the woman's eyes. Without hesitation or inner debate, he stepped forward, lifted her gently onto his shoulders, and carried her carefully across the dangerous water. Reaching the far bank, he set her down with care. She bowed deeply in gratitude and went on her way. The two monks resumed their journey, but something had changed. The first monk walked in tense silence, his thoughts tightening with every step. As hours passed, his agitation grew until he could no longer contain it. "Brother," he finally exclaimed, "I cannot understand your actions. Our vows forbid contact with women. Yet you carried her across the river. How could you violate our sacred discipline so easily?" The second monk looked at him calmly and replied with gentle simplicity, "Brother, I set her down on the far shore hours ago. You are the one still carrying her." The Buddha taught that holding on to anger is like grasping a burning coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. This story reveals the difference between compassionate action and mental attachment, between responding to what is needed now and carrying what has already passed. Much of our suffering arises not from events themselves, but from our refusal to release them once they are over. The first monk followed the rules perfectly, yet suffered greatly. The second monk broke a rule in service of compassion, then released the moment completely. One carried peace, the other carried weight. Notice how often you replay conversations, revisit mistakes, or hold on to moments that exist only in memory. The woman crossed the river in minutes, but the monk carried her for hours within his mind. In Zen, we cultivate great openness, the willingness to release even our most treasured understandings, not from doubt but from trust. And now, as the mind softens, and the body grows heavy, allow these stories to settle like leaves on still water. Nothing needs to be solved. Nothing needs to be achieved. The path continues, quietly, naturally, leading us into the next teaching, the lesson of deep water, and the truth revealed only when we stop resisting. For now, breathe, rest, and let sleep arrive like a gentle bell in the night. Beside a clear mountain river, where water sang softly as it moved over smooth stones, a solitary hermit lived in quiet practice. For many years he had chosen simplicity. The rhythm of flowing water and turning seasons became his teachers, reflecting the movements of his own mind. One morning, as pale sunlight filtered through leaves and the air carried the scent of the mountains, a young seeker arrived. His clothes were worn from travel. His eyes carried longing. He bowed deeply. "Master," he said, "I wish to become your student." The hermit looked at him calmly and asked only one question. "Why?" The young man paused. After a moment, he answered with sincerity, "Because I wish to find the divine." Without warning, the hermit rose, grasped the seeker firmly, and guided him toward the river. Before words could form, cold water closed over the young man's head. Beneath the surface, time disappeared. There was no philosophy, no belief, no longing for enlightenment. There was only one thing: the need to breathe. The body struggled. The lungs burned. Every thought dissolved into a single urgency. And then, the hermit lifted him back into the air. Gasping, shaking, water streaming from his face, the young man knelt on the riverbank. When his breath finally settled, the hermit spoke gently. "When you were beneath the water," he asked, "what did you want more than anything?" The answer came without thought. "Air." The hermit nodded. "Return home," he said softly. "Come back when you seek truth with the same necessity." And with that he turned away. This teaching is not about violence. It is about honesty. The Buddha reminded us that wisdom spreads like a single candle lighting many others. But the flame must be real. True awakening does not arise from curiosity alone. It arises from urgency. The seeker desired truth as an idea, not yet as life itself. We often approach the path gently, carefully, keeping our comforts close. But transformation asks something deeper. It asks us to release who we think we are. Not as punishment, but as freedom. The river represents ordinary awareness, where we skim the surface of life. Being submerged symbolizes going beneath habit, beneath identity, beneath illusion. Tonight, as your body rests and breath moves quietly, ask yourself gently, what do I truly seek? Is it a preference or a necessity? The Buddha taught that the path is not somewhere distant. It lives in the heart. Awakening comes not from collecting experiences, but from offering our whole being to this moment. And now, another story drifts into awareness, one that speaks of identity, change, and the mystery of consciousness. Long ago, a sage lived simply, walking among bamboo groves and listening to wind and water. One afternoon, he lay down beneath a flowering tree and rested. As warmth and fragrance surrounded him, his awareness softened. And he dreamed. In the dream, he was no longer human. He was a butterfly. He moved effortlessly through sunlight, wings light as breath. There was no memory of being a person, no name, no past, only color, movement, and freedom. He was not a man dreaming of a butterfly. He was fully butterfly. Then slowly he awoke. Lying beneath the tree once more, he felt the solidity of his body, the return of thought. Yet a question remained, gentle and profound. Was I a man dreaming of being a butterfly? Or am I now a butterfly dreaming of being a man? This was not a puzzle to solve. It was a doorway. Buddhist wisdom teaches that all conditioned states are impermanent. Waking, dreaming, sleeping, each arises and fades. Identity flows like water. Forms appear and disappear. When we identify too strongly with temporary roles, parent, professional, seeker, caretaker, we create fear and tension trying to preserve what cannot last. Yet change is not failure. It is the natural rhythm of life. A student becomes a teacher. Strength gives way to vulnerability. Youth shifts into age. Each transition is part of impermanence. A Zen master once taught that because everything changes, transformation is always possible. Sorrow can soften into peace. Fear can open into compassion. Even the most rigid patterns can dissolve. Non-attachment does not mean indifference. It means caring deeply without clinging, loving fully without possession, and enjoying without demanding permanence. We are all guests in this thing called life, borrowing roles and belongings for a brief stay. When we remember this, despair can soften into freedom. The Buddha encouraged us to use our temporary time wisely, to cultivate kindness, awareness, and wisdom while we are here. Tonight, as you rest in your own temporary shelter, surrounded by objects that will one day pass on, can you feel the quiet freedom in knowing you do not truly own them? Can this awareness deepen your gratitude rather than diminish it? By remembering the impermanent nature of our stay, each moment becomes precious. Now, let us continue with a teaching on transforming our relationship with suffering. This is the story of the salt and the lake. In a quiet monastery among gentle hills lived an elderly master known for patience and insight. Among his students was a young apprentice whose heart had grown heavy with complaints. Each morning, the apprentice arrived burdened with fresh grievances. "Master," he said, "life is so difficult. Yesterday noise disturbed my meditation. Today my body aches. When will suffering end?" The master listened silently day after day. And one crisp morning, as golden light filled the simple hall, the master then made a gentle and unexpected request. "My dear student," he said softly, "please go to the kitchen and bring me a little salt. Just a small handful." Though puzzled by the simplicity of the task, the apprentice bowed and obeyed. He returned with his palms cupped, holding coarse white crystals that glimmered faintly in the light. The master placed a small glass of water between them. "Now," he said calmly, "put all of the salt into this glass and drink it." The apprentice hesitated. "Master, that seems far too much salt for such a small glass of water." "Trust the experience," the master replied. "Drink." Reluctantly, The apprentice poured the salt into the glass, watching it dissolve into a cloudy mixture. He lifted it to his lips and swallowed a mouthful. Instantly, his face tightened as the bitterness overwhelmed his senses. "How does it taste?" the master asked quietly. "Bitter," the apprentice exclaimed. "Extremely bitter. Almost unbearable." The master smiled gently. "Very good. Now take the same amount of salt and walk with me." They moved together in silence until they reached the edge of a vast mountain lake. The water lay still and clear, reflecting the sky so perfectly it seemed endless. "Now," the master said, "place the salt into the lake." The apprentice stepped into the shallows and opened his hands. The crystals scattered and disappeared without a trace. "Drink from the lake," the master instructed. The apprentice cupped the cool water and drank. It tasted fresh and pure. "How does it taste now?" the master asked. "Clear," the apprentice replied with surprise. "Clean and refreshing." "Do you taste the salt?" the master asked. The apprentice paused, attentive. "No," he said softly. "There is no salt." The master sat beside him and spoke with quiet tenderness. "My student, the pain of life is like salt. No more, no less. Pain is inevitable. But the bitterness you experience depends on the size of the container that holds it." He continued, "When pain arises, you have a choice. You can be a small glass, where every grain overwhelms you, or you can become a lake vast enough that the same pain dissolves without harm." Then he said gently, "Do not remain a glass. Become a lake." The Buddha taught that pain is unavoidable, but suffering is optional. We cannot remove hardship from life, but we can change how we relate to it. Awareness itself is flexible. It can contract into narrow focus, where difficulty fills the entire field of experience. Or it can expand into spacious presence, where challenges arise and pass without dominating the whole. The pain was already changing, already fading. It had appeared suddenly, existed fully, and was now dissolving without leaving a trace. In that moment, there were no concepts, no theories, no questions, only direct experience. Formed just as it was, empty just as it is. The monk understood, not with thought, but with being. Emptiness was not the absence of experience. It was the nature of experience itself. Everything arises. Everything passes. Nothing needs to be held. Zen teaches us not to replace living truth with ideas about truth. When we try to grasp life with the mind, it slips away. When we allow ourselves to experience directly, understanding unfolds on its own. Thoughts arise. Where do they come from? Where do they go? Sensations move through the body. Sounds appear and disappear. Even the sense of I flows like a river, never the same, yet never gone. This emptiness is not cold or hollow. It is spacious, alive, and gently creative. The silent field in which everything dances. The Buddha reminded us that all conditioned things are impermanent, not as an idea, but as an invitation to see clearly. Tonight, as you lie here, allow thoughts to come and go without following them. Feel sensations rise and fade without naming them. Sense the open space that holds it all. You do not need to understand emptiness. You are already resting within it. And now, as your breath slows and the body softens, we turn gently toward another story, one about trust and the quiet courage to release our grip. This is the story of the crystal river. In the depths of a clear, flowing river, where the water moved like a steady breath, there lived a small village of creatures. The current carried the wisdom of distant mountains and unseen seas. Yet every creature clung tightly to stones and roots along the riverbed. "Hold on," the elders warned. "The current is dangerous." And so, for generations they held on. "It will carry you into places you do not know. Safety lives in staying exactly where you are." That is what the elders warned. Yet among the many small creatures clinging to stones along the riverbed, one grew quietly tired. Day after day, he watched the water pass above him. It moved without strain, without hesitation, clear, steady, and alive. While others spoke only of fear and effort, he felt a question forming deep within him. What would it feel like to trust? One morning, his voice trembled gently as he spoke. "I am weary of holding on," he said. "I cannot see where the river leads, but I sense that it knows its way. If I continue clinging, I fear I will fade from boredom before I ever truly live." A hush fell across the riverbed. Gasps followed. "Foolish one," they cried. "The current will smash you against the rocks. You will be broken, scattered, lost." But the small creature had already made peace with his choice. He took one last look at the familiar stones, the roots he had gripped for so long, and gently released his hold. At once, the river gathered him. Just as the others feared, his body was carried downward, rolling against stone after stone. There was pain, sharp and unfamiliar. Yet something unexpected happened. He did not fight. He did not reach for another anchor. He allowed the river to move him completely. And slowly, almost tenderly, the water lifted him. The rocks fell away. The tumbling ceased. Now he was no longer beneath the current. He was within it, carried effortlessly, held without force. As he flowed onward, creatures downstream looked up in wonder. One of their own moved through the water with grace, as if flying. "A miracle!" they cried. "A savior has come." Hearing them, the flowing creature felt only compassion. "I am no savior," he called gently. "The river lifts us all, if we stop clinging. Our work is not to hold the bottom, but to trust the journey." But his words dissolved into the water. They clung tighter, and later told stories of a miracle they had witnessed, never realizing the river was still flowing around them. The Buddha taught that we lose only what we cling to. This quiet truth rests at the heart of our lives. We grasp for certainty, believing it will protect us. Yet in gripping what must change, we create the suffering we hope to escape. Life moves like water, always changing, never still. When we resist, we grow tired. When we trust, we are carried. Now, as you rest here, notice where your own hands may still be holding tightly. A worry about tomorrow, a memory from yesterday, an idea of who you must be. You do not need to push in. The river you feared is the same river that brings you home. And now, as the mind grows quiet, another teaching arises, a story of returning to what is real when fear appears strongest. Long ago, during a time of endless conflict, a warrior found himself captured after defeat. His weapons were taken, his armor removed. That night, he was placed in a narrow stone cell. The door closed with a heavy sound. Darkness settled. His thoughts raced ahead. Interrogation, king of theft. His breath grew shallow. His heart thundered. Sleep felt impossible. Hours passed. Then, in the quiet, a memory surfaced, the voice of his Zen teacher. Tomorrow is not real. Only now exists. At first, the words felt distant. But slowly, the warrior noticed his breath. In this moment, he was breathing. He felt the straw beneath him. He heard wind outside the cell. In this moment, no torture was happening. No execution. Only presence. The future revealed itself as thought, nothing more. A calm settled in his body. His breathing softened. For the first time, he smiled. Within minutes, he slept peacefully. The Buddha taught that life is lived only here, not in imagined suffering, not in feared futures, only now. And now, you are here, breathing. Nothing more is required. Let your thoughts drift like clouds. Let the river carry you. Sleep is already arriving. Planning and preparation have their place in life. They help us move wisely through the world. But when planning hardens into constant worry, it quietly steals our peace. Worry pulls the mind away from what is real and carries it into imagined futures that do not yet exist. A gentle Zen teacher once reminded us that because everything is impermanent, every moment remains open. The future is not fixed. It unfolds through countless causes and conditions, most of which we cannot see or control. The worried mind believes that difficulty must continue, that pain will grow, that fear is certain. But impermanence whispers something softer. Nothing stays the same. The warrior in his cell could not truly know what the next day would bring. Perhaps rescue, perhaps mercy, perhaps an unexpected turn beyond imagination. The Buddha spoke simply, the past is already gone. The future has not yet arrived. There is only this moment to live. This teaching does not ask us to abandon responsibility. It invites us to notice where our attention has wandered and to guide it gently back. In Zen practice, we cultivate beginner's mind, meeting each moment as it is, without the weight of expectation or fear. When we fully arrive in the present, we often discover a quiet strength already here, a clarity that worry never reveals. Nothing around the warrior changed. The same cell, the same uncertainty. Yet when his attention returned to the now, fear softened into peace. This same transformation is available to you. Tonight, if thoughts of tomorrow arise, do not push them away. Simply notice. Ask softly, what is actually happening right now? Feel the breath entering and leaving your body. Notice the weight of your body resting. Sense the air touching your skin. These simple experiences anchor you in reality rather than imagination. The Buddha taught, do not dwell in the past. Do not dream of the future. Place the mind gently in the present moment. Here, even a prison opens. As this understanding settles, another story emerges. One that points to a truth so close it often goes unseen. This is the story of the fish and the ocean. Far beneath the surface of a vast, shimmering sea, a young fish swam restlessly through familiar waters. Light filtered down in soft blues and greens. Coral gardens swayed gently. Life moved in quiet harmony. Yet the young fish felt unsettled. He had heard others speak of something called the ocean. They spoke with reverence, as if it were the most important thing of all. But no matter where he swam, he could not find it. At last, he approached an ancient sea turtle whose shell carried the marks of many journeys. "Elder," the fish asked, "everyone speaks of the ocean, but I cannot find it anywhere. What is this ocean they speak of?" The turtle regarded him kindly. Alone in the darkness, his mind began to race. He knew what often followed capture. Interrogation would come, seeking secrets of his lord and army. If he remained silent, torture would follow. And beyond that, execution. His thoughts painted these possibilities in vivid detail. His heart pounded. His breath grew shallow. Sleep felt impossible as fear replayed its stories again and again. Hours passed as he paced, sat, and lay on the straw-covered floor. Nothing seemed to ease the storm of imagined suffering. Then, from within the noise of his mind, a memory arose. He recalled the calm voice of his Zen teacher from long ago, speaking gently at the monastery where he had once trained. "Tomorrow is not real," the teacher had said. "Only this moment exists." At first, the warrior resisted the teaching. How could tomorrow be unreal when danger felt so near? But as he sat quietly, something softened. He noticed his breath moving freely. He felt the ground beneath him. He heard the wind outside, passing through trees, indifferent to human struggle. In this moment, he was not being harmed. In this moment, he was alive. In this moment, there was only awareness. The fears that had seemed overwhelming revealed themselves as thoughts, images of a future that had not yet arrived. As this realization settled, his body relaxed. His breath slowed. His heart steadied. A quiet peace replaced the panic. For the first time since his capture, he smiled. Within minutes, he fell into deep, restful sleep. He had been freed, not from the cell, but from the prison of imagined suffering. The Buddha taught that if you wish to understand your past, look at your present state. If you wish to understand your future, look at your present actions. The warrior discovered this truth directly. Life is only ever lived now. Why do we torment ourselves with imagined futures? Zen teaching explains that the mind is designed to anticipate danger. This ability protects us when threats are real, but becomes suffering when imagination replaces reality. Notice your own life. How much anxiety comes from scenarios that exist only in thought? Conversations that have not happened, outcomes that are unknown, futures that may never arrive. The warrior's insight teaches us that we can prepare without worrying, plan without panic. Impermanence reminds us that nothing is fixed. Everything changes. Even the most frightening situation contains uncertainty. As one Zen teacher said, because things change, hope is always possible. The future is shaped by countless causes we cannot fully predict. When we rest in the present, we discover resources for calm and clarity that worry never reveals. Tonight, as your mind drifts toward tomorrow, gently return to now. Feel your breathing. Sense the room around you. Let this moment be enough. Do not dwell in the past. Do not chase the future. Rest the mind here. Now, let us turn to a story of fearlessness, of a meeting between power and stillness. This is the encounter between a general and a Zen master who could not be shaken. During the violent civil wars that swept across feudal Japan, armies moved through villages like storms. When word spread that a powerful general was approaching, people fled in fear, carrying what little they could. In one village, houses emptied, shops closed, and streets fell silent. Everyone fled, everyone except an old Zen master who remained in his small temple at the village center. When the army arrived, the general noticed smoke rising gently from the temple chimney. Curious, he decided to investigate. Expecting fear or submission, he approached with his officers. Instead, he found the Zen master calmly tending his garden, as if nothing unusual were happening at all. And in that stillness, something unexpected began to unfold. The old man's quiet lack of reaction unsettled the general. Accustomed to fear, submission, and trembling obedience, he found this calm presence both confusing and deeply irritating. When the master showed no sign of reverence or alarm, the general felt his anger rise like a sudden flame. "You ignorant old man!" the general shouted, his voice cutting through the still courtyard as his hand moved toward his sword. His armor caught the afternoon light, sharp and imposing. "Do you understand who stands before you? I am someone who could end your life without hesitation." Yet the master remained unmoved. He continued tending a small flowering plant, his movements slow and careful, as though nothing unusual had been said. Only after a moment did he look up, meeting the general's gaze with the same gentle attention he might offer any visitor. "And do you understand," the master replied calmly, "that you are standing before someone who can lose his life without hesitation?" The general froze. His sword remained half-drawn, his anger dissolving into stunned silence. In all his years of war, he had seen many forms of bravery, panic-driven courage, desperate defiance, reckless boldness, but never this. Here was not resistance, not defiance, but complete acceptance. A peace so deep that even death held no power. In that moment, the general realized something he had never encountered before. There existed a strength greater than the power to kill. And that strength was the absence of fear of being killed. Slowly, he returned his sword to its sheath. Without another word, he turned away and left the temple behind. The village remained, untouched, spared not by strategy or negotiation, but by one person's unshakable fearlessness. The Buddha taught that all conditioned things are impermanent. When this truth is fully accepted, a quiet authority naturally arises. Fear loses its grip when there is nothing left to protect. Zen teaching reminds us that most fear does not come from danger itself, but from clinging to what cannot be held: life, status, comfort, identity. When clinging fades, threats lose their force. The general ruled through fear. But the master had already released what fear depends on. His calm was not indifference nor bravado. It was the natural result of deep understanding. Consider your own life. How much anxiety comes from trying to preserve things that must eventually change? The Master shows us that true freedom does not come from being untouchable, but from having nothing that can truly be taken away. This does not mean seeking harm or welcoming danger. It means meeting life as it is, without resistance to its temporary nature. One word spoken from acceptance carries more power than 1,000 threats spoken from fear. Tonight, as you reflect on pressures and uncertainties, remember the Master's quiet response. Let acceptance create a steadiness within you that cannot be shaken. Now we turn to a teaching about perception and the limits of thought. This is the lesson of 3 strikes and deeper seeing. At a mountain monastery, students gathered to learn from the 6th patriarch, Huineng. Among them was a brilliant young monk named Xin Hui, known for his sharp mind and challenging questions. One afternoon, as sunlight drifted through the halls and the monastery rested in quiet rhythm, Xin Hui approached the master, who sat motionless in meditation. With respectful confidence, Xin Hui asked, "Master, when you meditate, do you see or do you not see?" Without warning, the patriarch struck him 3 times with his teaching stick. The blows were sharp, startling. "When I strike you," the master asked calmly, "does it hurt or does it not?" Xin Hui paused, rubbing his shoulder. "It both hurts and does not hurt," he replied carefully. "I both see and do not see," the patriarch said. Confused, Xin Hui pressed further. "How can that be?" The master replied gently, "I see the movements of my own mind. I do not see the faults of others." With these words, the teaching became clear. True seeing is not mystical vision. It is awareness of one's own thoughts, emotions, and reactions, without judgment. Not seeing is freedom from labeling others as right or wrong. Zen teaches us that clear perception begins within. When we stop projecting, clarity naturally appears. Tonight, as your thoughts slow and your body rests, allow awareness to turn inward. Notice the mind without trying to change it. Let judgment soften. Let seeing become simple. And in this quiet seeing, rest. As our journey continues, we now move toward a story of contentment and desire. This is the path of the stone cutter. High in the mountain villages lived a humble stone cutter who unknowingly carried the secret of peace. Each morning, he walked winding paths to the quarry, singing softly as he worked among the rocks. Though he owned little, he wanted nothing more than what he already had. His life felt whole in its simplicity. The steady rhythm of his hands, the quiet companionship of the mountains, the honest weight of daily labor. Nothing seemed lacking. His heart moved through each day without worry, without longing. One morning he was summoned to shape stone for the vast home of a powerful nobleman. As he approached the estate, his breath caught. Towering marble pillars rose toward the sky. Gardens unfolded in perfect balance, each path measured, each flower placed with intention. For the first time, a sharp ache stirred within him. A subtle dissatisfaction pierced the calm he had always known. "If only I were wealthy," he whispered to himself. "Then I would not need to work beneath the sun as I do now." To his great surprise, a quiet voice seemed to rise from the stone itself. "Your wish is granted. From this moment on, whatever you desire shall be yours." That evening, he returned to where his small hut once stood, only to find a mansion waiting in its place. Wide halls, soft floors, rooms filled with light and abundance. He set aside his tools and entered a life of comfort. Days passed in ease. Yet one sweltering afternoon, as he gazed from an ornate window, he saw the royal procession below. The king sat calmly in shade, surrounded by servants, untouched by heat or dust. Serene, commanding. If only I were king, the thought arose. And in an instant he found himself reclining on silk cushions, carried through the streets in regal splendor. But the carriage grew warm. Even thick walls could not keep the sun away. The heat pressed in without mercy. "I wish I were the sun," he declared. At once, he became radiant, pouring warmth and light across the world. Power surged through him. Yet soon, heavy clouds gathered, dark and unyielding, blocking his brilliance entirely. "I wish to be a cloud." Now vast and swollen, he thundered across the sky, releasing rain with unstoppable force. But as the rain fell, it struck an immense stone that refused to move. "A rock is stronger than I," he realized. "I wish to be a rock." Suddenly, he stood rooted in the mountainside, solid and enduring, unmoving, unbreakable. Then he heard a sound, a quiet, steady chipping at his base. Looking down, he saw a small human figure, patiently shaping stone. "A human is stronger than I," he thought. "I wish to be a man again." And so he returned to his former self, walking familiar mountain paths with his tools in hand. But something within him had shifted. As he worked, the breeze brushed his skin. The stone responded beneath his hands, and his heart filled with a deeper joy than before. His song returned, fuller, slower, wiser. He had learned to be content with exactly who he was. The Buddha once said, "Health is the greatest gift. Contentment is the greatest wealth." This ancient truth reveals the endless cycle of wanting that blinds us to the richness already present. We believe happiness waits in the next change. Yet each wish fulfilled only gives rise to another desire. The stone-cutter's journey teaches us that happiness cannot be found through outer transformation. Perhaps you recognize this pattern. "I will be happy when I achieve more," only to find new pressures waiting. "I will be at peace when I have enough," only to discover that worry grows alongside abundance. Zen teacher Suzuki Roshi said, "You are perfect as you are, and you can use a little improvement." This gentle paradox points directly to the heart of contentment. To fully accept what is, while moving naturally with life's changes. The stone cutter did not become something greater. He simply learned to see clearly. His work remained the same, but his relationship with life was transformed. Contentment does not come from different experiences, but from meeting each experience with a different awareness. Tonight, as the mind reaches for what is not here, can you pause? Can you rest where you are? Can you hear the quiet song that arises when you stop trying to become something else? The Buddha taught, contentment is natural wealth. Luxury is artificial poverty. The deepest transformation is not becoming different, but recognizing the completeness that has always been present. And now, as we continue this gentle journey, we turn toward a teaching about resistance and flow. This is the story of the old man and the waterfall. In a mountain village where a swift river carved through ancient stone, an elderly sage often walked beside the water. He watched how the current moved around obstacles, never stopping, never forcing. The villagers knew him as a quiet man who understood something subtle about nature. One afternoon, dark clouds gathered. Rain fell hard. The river swelled, racing toward a roaring waterfall that plunged into a rocky gorge. Most people stayed far away. Anyone swept into those waters would surely perish. The old man, caught in the storm, slipped as the riverbank gave way. He fell into the torrent and was carried swiftly toward the falls. The villagers cried out, running helplessly along the shore. They watched as he vanished over the edge. Certain he was lost, they prepared to search for his body once the waters calmed. But moments later, they saw him emerge below, unharmed. He walked calmly to the shore, water streaming from his robes, and sat quietly. Amazed, they rushed to him. "How did you survive?" they asked. The old man smiled gently. "I survived," he said, "because I did not fight the water. I became like it. When the water moved, I moved. When it turned, I turned. I followed its path without resistance." The villagers fell silent. They had witnessed more than survival. They had seen wisdom in motion. The Buddha taught that all things are impermanent. Being is always becoming. Here lies the wisdom of flowing with life rather than exhausting ourselves in resistance. Why do we struggle so fiercely against what cannot be changed? Zen teaches that the ego believes force will bring control. Yet force often creates more suffering. The old man did not surrender his will to live. He simply chose alignment over opposition. In life, we face similar choices: to push and strain, or to move skillfully with what is present. As water wears away stone not through strength but persistence, so too can gentleness become great power. The Buddha said, "Hatred does not cease by hatred, but by love alone." This truth applies to all resistance. Tonight, look gently at something you are struggling against. Where might softness serve you better than force? As we come to rest, notice this moment. The quiet beneath the stories. The stillness that was never created, only revealed. The Buddha said, "As a solid rock is not shaken by the wind, so the wise remain steady amid praise and blame." You are not the wind. You are the rock. Rest here. Let the breath move on its own. Let the body sink into stillness. This is true rest. Sleep well.